Welcome back, and what a day, Broncos country. This is Let's Talk Broncos. I'm Brie Maestas here with Zach Seegers and Joey Richards. Guys, how are you?
I'm doing well. Today was a very, very, very eventful day for Broncos country. That press conference was kind of insane, and I can't wait to get into it. I mean, it. Usually, these press conferences, I won't even lie to everybody here. I rarely watch all of these because I know what I'm getting. I'm getting coach talk. I'm getting the GM talk. I'm getting exactly what the team wants you to know, right? And I feel like I can figure things out without them feeding me whatever the Broncos want to feed me. But today, while it was similar in the fashion, they absolutely had to address some things. So I can't wait to get into today's show. It's going to be very interesting. I can't wait to get your guys' take on all of this because we've had conversation, but not a ton of conversation about it. And yeah, Zach, how are you doing, man?
Pretty good. Pretty good, honestly. I feel vindicated. I feel alive. I feel hopeful about the Broncos' future for the first time since week 3. And it's a good place to be right now. I think today was a big win for Broncos country.
A lot of important moves were made. I think that something had to happen, and today proves just that. Obviously, as you've already said, press conference today at 10 a.m. It went over swimmingly, I guess. A lot of information was shared, a lot of speculation to be had on Twitter. I'm sure that most of you were able to see all of that, but we want to get the party started here. I do want to remind everyone that we are live. So if you want to join the conversation, which I implore you to do so, you need to go ahead and search for us over on Mile High Sports, either YouTube, Facebook. Links are down below. You can jump on, get your questions and comments highlighted exactly as those who are jumping in are doing right now. Good evening, Robert Armstrong. How does it look when the owner takes most of the ropes from the GM? Also said coach will report directly to the owner. I think that's a great place to start, guys. Why don't we do that? Zach, you first.
I think generally speaking, it's a bad look. It's not ideal. I think that goes without saying. You generally only want one of those positions reporting to ownership, and both will be reporting to ownership. I also think it's entirely necessary given the position the Broncos find themselves in. George Paton has done one of the two following. Well, one thing we know for sure, he's made one of the worst head coach hires in NFL history. Hackett is the first guy not named Urban Meyer to be fired partway through his first season since 1978. Like, it's a total disaster. And then the Russell Wilson trade right now looks like a complete disaster. If they move off Russell Wilson, it's one of the worst trades in NFL history. That goes on George Paton's resume. And if they don't move off Russell Wilson, if they keep him, they have to be worried about George Paton making moves that end up compounding that Russell Wilson mistake and doubling down on that mess up. So yeah, it makes sense to take some of the power out of his hands and maybe put it in a place you trust him more.
Okay. Here's my take on this. There was a first when yesterday the news first broke. There was a ton of, we didn't know what exactly that meant. We didn't know. But coming out of this, and I don't care what anyone says, I'm just going to go straight out and say how I perceive the situation. To me, it feels a lot like a demotion for George Paton. That's what it feels like to me.
Cut out the for me. It straight up is. Anyone who doesn't see that is pulling wool over their eyes. It's in the writing of these moves. George Paton last year was allowed to hire or interview head coaching candidates and ultimately make a hire. That is now out of his hands. He used to be the superior to the head coach and have the head coach report to him. That will no longer be the case. What Joey is saying is objectively true.
It's a demotion, everybody. That's what it is. You are taking responsibilities he had away from him. Now, I want to go a throwback Thursday, TBT. We're going to take it all the way back to when Hackett was first hired, and they were taking away roles from him. And how was it framed, Broncos country? It was framed as, yeah, no, Hackett realizes his mistakes. He's hiring a clock management coach. Hackett realizes his mistakes. He's putting in a new play caller. Guys, the Broncos have no advantage to go out there and slander a guy that's currently in place. There's no advantage to that. The advantage will be making it sound like, oh, yeah, we're all together and this is what it is. But at the end of the day, there's not a GM or a coach in the league that wants responsibilities taken from them. They're confident people. This is how they got this far. They think that they're going to do a good job. They're not sitting there thinking, yeah, you know what? Take my responsibilities from hiring a coach away. I also agree that I can't do that. That's not something that they're thinking. This is a responsibility that the Penner has taken away from him. And yeah, it is telling to me. It tells me that his role has been mitigated in the Broncos organization. And that's just kind of what it is. And I want to make that clear. I think that's important for everybody to know going forward. They did pull positions away from him, in my opinion.
Yeah, oh man, see, I'm happy. I alluded to it at the start of the show. I'm happy today because it looks like everybody cut Russ might be on the menu, and I'm ready to feast. Hey man, if this is what Russell Wilson's cooking, I will dive into that meal. Let's go. The cut Russ filet is really, really nice stuff. And I think if you look at their comments today, which were super non-committal, you had George Paton stumbling over his words saying, well, we've got to make sure the head coach gets along with Russ or whoever the quarterback. I mean, the backups, like, so clearly was about to say, or whoever the quarterback is. That's opening a door that does not need to be opened. And he knows that. So he tried to shut it down. It was something he did not mean to say. But I think that demonstrates that the door is open there in their mind. Cutting Russ is something that George Paton and Greg Penner are seriously considering. I don't know if they'll land on that, but they are seriously considering. And the things that I am hearing that I can't even report make me only more confident in that fact, people. There's reason for optimism in Broncos country. I believe that to be true. The short but very dark Russell Wilson nightmare might be coming to an end. I think it's going to come down to whatever the next head coach wants to do. I think it comes down to whatever the next head coach wants to do. And that head coach is going to have personnel power. And if it's, some of the names that are, I think, fairly realistic, like a Sean Payton, like a Jim Harbaugh, they're going to have the type of contract and sway that they won't be tied to Russell Wilson. And they'll be around for long enough to build this team in their image. So if they want to move on from Russell Wilson, I think they'll be totally empowered to do so. And all of this, like Peyton losing personnel control, but probably, honestly, yeah, he probably is going to lose final say over the roster. He's going to be the personnel guy, but I bet the next head coach has personnel control. And George Payton losing that opens up the door for a Russell Wilson cut. And the avenue, sorry, Bree, this is the last thing I'll say. The avenue they're going down right now doesn't ensure a Russell Wilson cut, but it's the avenue of non-committal and smoky statements and getting all their ducks in a row that they would have to be walking if they wanted to cut Russell Wilson. Now, again, it does not mean they will cut Russell Wilson, but they are taking the steps they would have to take in order to get to that point. So there's a chance they ultimately are there.
Why not pull the Band-Aid entirely off all at the same time and do a complete flush of the system? What is the benefit of delineating responsibilities for George Payton while keeping him on board? I kind of want to hear your thoughts on that, because there is pushback to the idea that there's no such thing as a hot seat here for the general manager.
I disagree. I disagree. I think that the GM seat is very hot. Zach kind of hit on it earlier when he said that I think I'm answering this question correctly. I think that GM. What do you think? What was that, Zach?
Well, the GMC was hot. That was part of the question. But what was the other part, Bree? Because that was the thing I was getting fired up about.
So the delineation of responsibilities and not just pulling the plug all at once. What are we
Oh,
waiting
yes.
for?
I'll
Yeah,
argue
why
with
not cut him?
you. I will.
I
I'll
don't
play
know.
devil's advocate today.
And frankly, I think Joey and I might be on the same page. I think it's probably best to just, hey, let's do the hard reboot right now. But I think the reason you don't fire Paton, yet demote his role, if you were to fire Paton and keep him all in place, I don't think it would speak towards disappointment in Russ. But keeping Paton while also taking away all these powers, to me, speaks to a bit of a lack of belief in Russ, because I think your question is the revealing light of all this. Why keep George Paton? Why keep him? Because sincerely, that question was asked and they arrived at an answer. So what was their answer? I would very strongly bet you, and I don't have reporting on this, it's speculation, but just considering everything that we know, I would strongly bet that the reason why was drafting. When do you prioritize drafting over all else, and maybe you just want to keep a guy around who's a really good drafter? When you're rebuilding. If you are tearing this thing down to the studs, maybe not all in all this season, and you know it's not going to be a very attractive job for a year, it might make sense to keep George Paton for a round. Tell him, hey, you can save your job with some really smart lower level free agent signings, with a really strong draft class. Show us that you're the guy to shepherd this rebuild into the future. That is a reason to keep him around as a glorified drafter. That can kind of be neutered by whatever head coach you bring in. Otherwise, there really isn't a reason to save George Paton's job and remove all his responsibilities. Like, if you're going to save his job, keep all his responsibilities if you really believe in him. To do this kind of mix thing, to me, and just keep him as a drafter, shows a prioritization of the draft.
Yeah.
That points to a rebuild to me.
I was going to add on to that, Zach, and just say yes. Okay, this is a question I want to ask Broncos country. Why would you take, and Zach, you said this pretty much. I'm just going to reframe it. Why would you take responsibilities away from George Paton if you did believe in Russ? Because wouldn't you be taking it away if you thought the mistake was the contract? Why? What is the reason? Are you taking all of his responsibilities away purely off of one? Yes. Are you taking all of his responsibilities away just off of one coaching misfire? Or is there more to it? And then if there is more to it, what is it? To me, the two most clear issues in this George Paton saga, the thing that I see the most is, yeah, he hired the wrong coach, and then also he gave Russell Wilson that extension and traded a ton for him. Those are the two things I see. I don't understand why else you would take away responsibilities from him. I just don't. If I'm under the belief that this was somewhat of a demotion, and there has to be reasons to that. One of the reasons would be because he gave Russ that contract. No, I don't know what other lines I could draw to that. I really don't. I don't know what else. I think I also want to say this. In this mitigated role, I think he could be successful in a role like that. I think he could be really successful in a role like that. I think he could play a vital role in one like that. At the end of the day, I do think that it will come down to if the coach wants him, because I am under the belief that this next coach is going to hold the majority of the power. I think that this next coach, the Broncos hire, they're going to want this guy to be the face. It might not come out that way because these coaches decline or whatever the situation may be, but I think the person that they're going to offer the most and give the most responsibility is going to be the Jim Harbaughs of the world, the Sean Paytons. Whether that happens, uncertain, but I think that's what they're going after.
I think it's a sliding scale. Are you, and we'll get into this, are you,
that was I want to give a shout out for a fire graphic change right there. That was like perfectly on cue.
Yeah. Shout out, Bree. But like if you're going with a Frank Reich, you're probably not going to give him that much control. Again, he's going to be directly reporting to the owner. Peyton's role is already minimized, so there's something to be said about that. But I think, yeah, if it's a Harbaugh, if it's a Peyton, Sean Payton, that is, you are looking at a huge power move. Personally, man, if they hire Sean Payton, it's going to get really annoying talking about the Denver Broncos between George Payton and Sean Payton. We're just going to have to start going first names. But Sean Payton's a name to watch. The one thing I wanted to hit, just on last thing I'll say about the Russ thing. I know I'm feeding a fed horse. But the one thing I want to hit on with Russell
Feeding
Wilson,
a fed horse,
yeah, is a stupid PETA slogan for people that aren't aware, or analogy or idiom or whatever. Goodness, I keep losing my train of thought. Last thing I want to hit on with Russell Wilson. I look back at the 2021 Rams end of season press conference and how they talked about Jared Goff. They didn't come out and say, this dude's done. This dude sucks. We want to move on from him at any, no ifs, ands, or buts. They were a little stronger than the Broncos were in this one, but they were basically like, yeah, Goff's our quarterback. Goff's a good guy. He's our quarterback. Man, he is our quarterback, and he's a good fella, and he didn't play great this season, and hopefully he'll play better. Stuff like that. That's really non-committal, and just like, in this moment, he is our quarterback. And I don't think the Broncos' tone was quite that strong, but I think it was right there. They're opening the doors up for the head coaching search. Jim Harbaugh is the name that I think Vegas is underrating the most. They have him as like the 10th, 15th favorite guy. I think there's a good chance for it. They can throw a lot of money at him. If he has any interest in rejoining the NFL, I think this would be a very, very appealing opportunity for him to do that and just frankly take over a franchise and have insane amounts of money and power over that NFL franchise where he can't get jostled out like he was in San Francisco by Trent Baalke. I'd love that pick. People will point to him maybe alienating NFL locker rooms over an extended period of time. I was on the Irish NFL show rather today. And when I brought up Jim Harbaugh as my dream candidate, I got that pushback from Colum. My thing is, if your concern is that this guy only works well with players for 4 years, and if you have him for 4, 5, 6 years, it'll become a problem in the locker room. Cross that bridge when you get there. Only 12 of the NFL's 32 head coaches have been with their team for 4 seasons. If the Jim Harbaugh problem is that 4+ seasons on, he might not be a great head coach, okay, we'll cross that bridge when he's already in the top third of the head coaches in the NFL. Like, that's a good problem to have in my book. So he's my number one guy. And I think does have a good chance just because the resources, obviously Michigan's such an appealing job right now. It'll be hard to pry him away.
Okay. I want to ask a question to both of you guys. I want to start with Bree here because she was the first one to get off of, or she was never really on the rush train. So credit to her there. She was like off this way back then, before, like right when the trade happened. Would you hire a coach, Bree, in thinking that this coach needs to fix Russell Wilson? Or would you just hire a coach for the Broncos, the best coach that you think possible? Or do you think that this guy, or would you hire someone that needs to fix him? Is, I guess, my question.
It's you're really setting me up here, Joey. Thank you for that. No, because the thing is I don't think that Russell Wilson needs fixing by his head coach. If you mean stand up to him, if you're hoping to make that relationship work, yes. But I think that you bring in a coach that's going to fix your rookie QB, your first year QB, who's still growing in the league, and you want to build a scheme around them. You're not taking a head coach in to somehow fix a 10-year veteran of the league. You're looking to rein him in. So if that's the direction that the Broncos are planning on going, they could try. But I don't believe that that's something that's going to iron itself out to the standard in which Broncos country needs.
Someone needs to tweet that. Bree, you need to tweet that. You need to tweet. Yeah, you need to tweet. Oh my God. Okay, here's the line. Here's the line. Oh my God. Okay, a 10-year vet doesn't need to be reined, or shouldn't need to be reined. I forget how exactly you said that. A 10-year vet shouldn't need to be reined in. Like, I forget what you said after that, but it was something around the fact that he should rein himself in, damn near. Like that. Honestly, I agree with that 1,000.
You're not babysitting here. You're bringing in
You're
someone
not.
to work through a system, and if you're rebuilding a system, it makes sense. But you're rebuilding then the quarterback position. You're not plugging in a quarterback who at one point in time existed in the top 10 quarterbacks of the league, who does no longer even kiss that realm. Like, I would understand bringing in a coach to work with him, but you need to rein Russell Wilson in. I just don't know if that's a possibility. I would like to go with my first initial reaction. D-Bronx1414 says, Bree literally broke Joey's brain with her teeth. Well, he set me up.
Someone should rewind that and tweet that exact quote out.
I'm going to clip it later, and I will tweet it from my account, and I will block and mute anyone who responds. Zach, go ahead.
It's what I've been saying in regards to just the on-field product too. Just like look at any interception from this Rams game. Like, I'm sorry, y'all, that's not on Nathaniel Hackett. In no world is Nathaniel Hackett or Justin Outen or Clint Kubiak telling Russell Wilson to make those decisions and to throw those passes. Like, it's just not. And if you think that's the product of coaching, like, does coaching also need to tell Russ how to tie his shoes? It's like, we're talking about very like low level basic things here. Like, hey, don't throw it into triple coverage 2 yards over your receiver's head.
All right. I have to play devil's advocate. I have to.
You have to say it's ideal.
Oh, shoot, what happened to my camera here?
I have no idea. We've lost Joey's signal. He's just super.
Oh, there we go. We're good. Okay, everybody.
But like, you think he's being coached up to throw it 2 yards over Cortland Sutton's head into triple coverage?
Zach Seegers, it's important that we have different. I may not even agree with the next point I'm going to say. I think it's important for everybody to have representation in this. Now, a Russ fan might
As
say,
you said that, we were a podcast with just 2 white guys and no one else. As Bree walked out of frame.
We're not. I've listened to these Russ supporters, right? They've come at me. I've heard their points. Zach, why he's had so many years of success. So many years of success. Why is it after one bad out of all these years of success are you willing to give up on this guy? There's out of the blue. What is it about Russell Wilson where you're willing to look way past him? Like, because for these, I want to say for me, because I'm playing the part. I'll say it. For me, I just don't think all those years should be washed away because of this one. That doesn't make any sense.
I feel like you're Nikola Jokic and you just tossed up, and I'm Aaron Gordon, and you just tossed up a beautiful lob to me that I get to send into the nether realm now. Why this year? The writing was already on the wall. You saw it towards the end of 2020 as defenses started shifting to this too high shell philosophy. Now the too high shell forces you to play within the box where Russell Wilson can't see. Now, Russell Wilson, his whole career, has had 2 big holes in his game. And that's hole number 1. He cannot operate in the short to intermediate part of the field, and he can't operate quick game. Hole number 2, he is a slow processor. He holds the ball for a long time, and he was able to make up for that because he had some superhuman abilities. He was maybe the best escaper and play extender we've seen in NFL history. It was Fran Tarkenton-esque. He was making people look foolish on a weekly basis in his prime. That was such a valuable ability because it allowed him to, 1, extend plays, which negated how harmful his slow processor was, and 2, it allowed him to change the throwing lanes. So you're not viewing that short to intermediate area of the field, straight up. You're rolling out of the pocket, and now you're looking at it from an angle. You're looking around the offensive line. So you can see those areas. You can work within them. Your passes aren't getting just batted at the line. So one, the defenses are evolving in a way that makes the game harder on Russell Wilson, rather than this single high cover 3 world that left a lot of stuff open deep and on the perimeters. Where does Russell Wilson want to attack? Deep and on the perimeters. Evolving away from that always would have hurt Russ. But now you're evolving away from that as Russ's mobility becomes a little less special, as it comes back to the pack. And now you're seeing all his flaws highlighted a lot more because he's not able to minimize
How do you respond to
his
that?
limitations as much. But so I think it's that. And then I think the thing that's really concerning is, so when you lay out the physical points like that and how defenses are evolving away from him, and I think that's very concerning. I think the nail in the coffin, though, is the mental stuff. What I was just talking about with that Cortland Sutton interception. Like, that is a Russell Wilson decision. That's not, you can't blame that on anyone but Russell Wilson. All 3 interceptions from this game. Like, that's Russell Wilson doing stuff a high school quarterback would be benched for doing. So now you've got the physical concerns, but even worse are the mental concerns. And I just don't see it returning. And it's stuff that's so clearly Russ. It's not the coaching staff. It's not the weapons around him. So, man, how do you fix it? Just that, I don't even know how you'd go about fixing this. You get a head coach that's really, really hard on Russ and coaches him up, and then he's just a limited quarterback instead of a limited quarterback trying to do what he's worst at, because that's what he is right now. He's a limited quarterback trying to do what he's worst at. Even if you knock out that second portion, I think he's still a very limited quarterback. And a limited quarterback earning 20% of your cap or whatever is a great way to lose football games.
I would like to stop asking the question of how do we fix it and how do we get in, like, how do we do this right the first time? Right. And I think that's what's going to fall in line with this next head coaching search. Is I don't know if we're going to see a brand new first time head coach unless it is someone who has shown a remarkable benefit to this franchise already. There's someone who's missing from this graphic who I think deserves an honorable mention, but I think you're looking at someone who's had a lot of coaching experience coming in, so the Broncos quit repeating the mistakes that they've been suffering the last 7 or so years. Zach,
I agree with you. I think philosophically somewhat, I understand the desire of, oh my God, these first time guys keep blowing up. Like, let's go with a retread. Personally, I don't think there's much correlation between retread coaches working or first time head coaches working. Like, I think it's kind of
use the plaster analogy. That is all. I don't think we differ on that whatsoever. I just want to point that out.
Totally fair. But that, I think, is one thing worth mentioning. On the other part, I think everyone's just kind of accepted, and understandably, I was working under the same assumption, 100%, that the Broncos would not hire a first-time head coach this cycle. And while I think they still probably don't, I would not say that's set in stone anymore with Greg Penner taking over and not George Paton. Because Greg Penner does not have the history of the Vance Joseph hire. He does not have the history of the Vic Fangio hire. He does not have the history of the Nathaniel Hackett hire. He has not hired anyone in this realm so far. His closest connection with the NFL has been through the Rams, who hired a retread in Jeff Fisher, and it was a disaster by the end, and hiring Sean McVay, a first-time head coach who was not highly thought of prior to getting the Rams job and has been a raging success. So I don't, again, I think ultimately, like, there's fan pressure. I think they want just an adult in the room, someone who can have personnel control and also manage the head coaching responsibilities. I think more likely than not, it's a retread. But I have gone from, similar to the Russell Wilson thing, I went from there's no way they're cutting him to, oh, wow, this looks like an option on the table now, to there's no way they're hiring a retread, to this looks like an option on the table now. Dan Quinn, too. I felt very confident they were going to hire Dan Quinn, George Paton's guy, safe hire. They're in a position where they need to make just some safe moves. Now George Paton's not making that decision. I think it still totally could be Dan Quinn, but I don't think he's the heavy favorite that he was prior to today's press conference.
I'm going to get some of these questions and comments here, and I'm going to take one away on myself, but let me go ahead and highlight some of these because I like them. I think another Russ point is not being brought up often. He's getting hurt a ton lately when staying healthy was his number one calling card. It's a great point there. Paul says, and it made me laugh. So in 23, instead of counting down play clock, fans need to start yelling, throw left or throw right.
Yeah.
Frankie
I
Abbott
love it. Oh
at
my
Frankie's
God,
Film.
Paul.
Yeah, Paul's
I love it.
working his way up the ranks of
A
brand new
welcome
subscriber.
addition to the family. Yeah, join
Really
the Discord if
appreciate
you
it.
really want to get wild with us, Paul. The link should be on all our socials. I'll make sure to drop it in the chat real quick.
Perfect. I love it. Frankie Abbott over at Frankie's Film, friend of the show. How do you guys feel about Penner and the ownership committee being heavily involved in the big decisions without really any experience? Well, I'll give you one back. Obviously, Condoleezza Rice being included on the college football side has been included in the process within committee involvement. So I think that there's at least one person. Also, does Peyton Manning get involved in this search committee? One would hope. How do you guys feel about this? Do you think the ownership group is in over their heads, or do you think they have enough under their wings in order to get this job done correctly this time?
It depends for me on how much money they're willing to spend and what responsibilities they're willing to, or how much power they're willing to give up. It's a scary thing, right? Because I don't think the Penners are X and O knowledgeable. You know, they don't understand. I like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they listen to the Let's Talk Broncos podcast or something. But but I would assume that they're business people, right? They don't understand all the football X and O's and what exactly goes into this. So that would lead me to two things. In the business world, how do they usually hire people? Off your resume and off your interview. I think those are going to be two massive things in this. And when I'm looking at, if I were thinking from a business perspective, an outside perspective from the football world, let's say I'm not entrenched in this, I think that they're going to chase the big names. Me personally, I think that's what they're going to do. I think they're going to go after and chase the big names because they have the bag to also pay these guys. They're going to go after the most impressive that come to mind immediately. When you think of football coach and then you look at the people available, you see Sean Payton is out there. You see Jim Harbaugh is out there. These are big names. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to go hire somebody that's outside of that, honestly. I don't think they're going to be leaning as much on Peyton. I really think that that's what they're going to do. I think that they're pulling responsibilities away from Peyton, so it makes me wonder how much influence he actually has. That's something I also want to point out.
Yeah, and I fully agree.
I also think that I don't know. I just looking at this from a business perspective and through my interviews in business, how has it gone? It's gone off my resume and notoriety in it, and then that's what's I think going to lead this whole thing. And yeah, that's just kind of what I think. It is scary, but at the same time, if they hire someone we all love, it's not going to be as scary. I'm a wobbler there. I'm not exactly sure.
I would stay away from the all we love. Zach, go ahead.
Yeah, fair on the all we love. To me, I think generally speaking, if we just speak in generalities, you don't want your ownership meddling in your head coaching search. You want them leaving the football decisions to the football people. And I think that's all true here. And I think if this is, a consistent thing over the, 20, 30 years of the Penner ownership tenure, it'll be a big problem. I don't think in this specific circumstance that it's an issue. I don't think George Payton's already too pot committed to the Russell Wilson mistake in one way or another. So there's that. He's either committed to it still, or he's owning it as one of the worst trades in NFL history. And you have a GM that, I'll quote the radio show I produce in the morning. They were talking about how if the only two metrics you evaluate a GM off of are what do they do at head coach and what do they do at quarterback, because those are the two most important positions, you could argue that George Payton's the worst GM in NFL history. Damn. I wouldn't go that strong, but based on his head coach hire, which is historically bad, right? One of the only one outside Urban Meyer since 1978 to get fired this quickly. And the quarterback move, have any GM screwed up at quarterback in it head coach to that level, they're few and far between. He's at least in the conversation for screwing that up the worst out of anyone. So I don't think it's crazy to limit his power some, and give it to the Penner Group. I also like the other thing I like about it, in small doses. Again, I don't think you want an owner always running the show, but in small doses, I think you'll get out of some of the NFL nepotism echo chamber stuff where, oh, well, Dan Quinn is George Payton's guy, so that's got to be the hire. How about we look at like who the best dude is?
1000%. Yes.
You know, like, let's do that. And you know what? The Penners are going to do that because they come from fucking Walmart. They're not tight with the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. Those are not the circles they traffic in. They're not tight with the Michigan head coach. Those are not the circles they traffic in. They traffic in the pepper business, you know, like they don't know these people. So I think they'll go in, they're coming in with a fresh face, a fresh look, and I don't know, hopefully figure something out.
I don't know what to say. Like the expletives went flying. The worst was thrown out. The absolute worst. Fucking Walmart. Like, we are in it, guys. I'm having a ton of fun over here. Samuel Castro says we also need coaches that make the players accountable for their performances.
Talk, Samuel. Talk that talk. I'm tired of it.
What was Melvin Gordon dunking on Nathaniel Hackett for? What are you mad at Nathaniel Hackett for, Melvin Gordon? Giving you 4 extra undeserved chances, my guy? Like, what are we on about?
I need to say something.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
I absolutely need to say something.
Tell him, Joey.
All this talk about the players coach, right? I like the players coaches. They're great. I love them. I love the coaches that all the players like. They're fantastic. One thing I can definitely, without any question, say is that the players didn't like hugging each other after the scuffles at practice. Yo, I'm tired of the corny coaches being talked up as the guys that, oh, he's a players coach. He's corny. You know, he's a players coach. I don't like this. This is not it. There's levels to this. Dan Campbell is a players coach. That is a guy that is an actual good players coach. That is a person that is hired. He's a former player. The players respect what he says. And this is the main thing I want to punch home. Respect. Not the silly tug-alicious stuff. I don't want a silly coach. The silly coach was like overhyped. It was not what we needed. This is the NFL, and these are grown men.
Unless it's Mike McDaniel, because we've seen that turn out quite well. He's silly and he balances it with production and output.
Yeah, but at the same time, they respect Mike McDaniel.
And he's silly. He doesn't try to be silly. Like, he's not Nathaniel Hackett coming out like, I'm a goof. Look at me. I heard I think it might be Benjamin Solak.
Goofy.
It might be Benjamin Solak or Steven Ruiz, but someone was talking about how like Nathaniel Hackett wishes he could be as funny as Mike McDaniel. Because Mike McDaniel's just like naturally funny. You know, that's just like his persona. Hackett is like, I put on a silly costume. Like, hey guys, I dressed up as a gold member from the Austin Powers movie because we got to get into the gold zone. You know, that's very different from Mike McDaniel, like talking with a Napoleon Dynamite tempo. You know, like one of those is very natural and understated and just like naturally funny, and one of them is like the teacher in high school who was like, I'm the cool teacher. And it's like, no, you're not the cool teacher. You're the teacher that like is desperate to be the cool teacher. But the cool teacher's the dude over here just being naturally cool. And
it's that science teacher that was doing cool chemistry experiments, and everyone just thought he was the best. Shout out my former high school
science teacher.
Shout out Mr. Knowles, Fairview, represent.
I think mine actually might watch the show. So hello, Chizzy Lavelle. No, a new name. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you chiming in, joining the conversation. No way does big name coach come to Denver. I think there's a lot of draw here. There is a misrepresentation within Broncos country that no way would a coach want to come here and work with, I don't know, the likes of Russell Wilson. Zach, take it away.
I think you're dead on. A good head coach probably doesn't want to come here and work with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's a bum, but
Damn. All right, quote that. Wait, I need
you know what? You know what
Damn,
does
what are we
bring a head coach in? You know what does bring a head coach in? Money, power. You know what the Walton Group can offer now that George Paton is in a less powerful role? Power and all the money in the world. All the money in the world that you could ever imagine. It's not a problem. I think they're like Sean Payton might not choose the Broncos for that reason. Like there are some big name head coaches who might cross off the Broncos for that reason. I would not go as strong as Chizzy as saying that there's just no way, because I think although it's very unlikely, I think it's possible because they can back up the Brinks truck.
Angela Christian thinks Surf or Sky Peyton is coming to Denver.
Ski?
I don't know how to read.
Surf or ski. Peyton is coming to Denver. I don't think Peyton is coming to Denver. From the reports,
I don't think so. I think it's possible.
I think the possibility is more than what I think the average fan, or I don't know if it's the average fan, but I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. I think that if Fangio is his defensive coordinator, it definitely won't happen. Frankie says, I don't think Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton come, sadly. Money does talk, to Zach's point. It does talk, and then also power talks. Here's the things that you have to – if you're a person trying to hire these people and you're in the Broncos situation, you need to promise them that their career as a Broncos head coach lives on past this, past the Russell Wilson stage. And then you also have to promise them that they're getting – I mean, you obviously have to pay them a ton. You have to promise them that. And, yeah, like, I don't know. You can make an interesting pitch if you're willing to pay substantially more than the next team. But it all depends. It all depends.
The other landing spots that make sense for Sean Payton, I think that make the most sense for Sean Payton, are because you have to figure in the amount of power he wants in the organization. Arizona Cardinals, and then Los Angeles Rams, only because it's very clear that Sean Payton's camp has been leaking that he wants to coach for one of the two Los Angeles franchises. Sean McVay might be retiring from the Rams. And there was a point where Brandon Staley looked like he was on the hot seat. I don't think Brandon Staley's on the hot seat anymore, so I don't think he's going to the Chargers. I don't think the Rams are in a better position than the Broncos. I think they're further away from competing than the Broncos, honestly, especially if you take my aggressive, cut Russ strategy. You also have to trade for Sean Payton. That'll be the bigger hurdle. You're going to have to give up some draft capital, and the Broncos aren't going to want to give up draft capital. Maybe you could give up players or something. But the understanding that I have is that the Saints are kind of doing a favor by Sean Payton. Honestly, by even trading him. They don't have to trade the guy. They could just be like, man, tough shit. You kind of abandoned our franchise and left us in a bad spot. No, we're not going to help you just coach for a better team. That's not something we're interested in doing. And they're not doing that. They are enabling him to go find this new team very clearly. And so I don't think they're going to ask for a crazy price for it, because that would kind of be defeating the purpose of what they've already spent the last year and a half or so doing. They'll get compensation, but I don't think it will be overly ridiculous. So I think it's a chance. And I do think like the amount of personnel control that Sean Payton would get in Denver and the amount of money he'd get in Denver would be appealing to him. The other one I forgot to mention, the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals, Rams, Broncos, those are all franchises in similar places, and the Broncos can probably give you the most money. Cardinals might offer you the most organizational power, but they're going to be a lot cheaper than the Broncos. Michael Bidwell is kind of notoriously a cheap owner. So it's a wrap. I'm not trying to dog anyone here. There's a reason why they haven't fired Steve Keim. But yeah, just I think there's a chance.
Adam Lamb over on Facebook says, my bet is on Dan Quinn. You know what? If I couldn't have it last year, why can't I have it this year? Is that a possibility that they go back and re-interview someone who seemed like the front runner to begin last season? Joey.
I find it interesting. Okay, so a few things. One, okay, your bet is on Dan Quinn. I think it's important to note that Paton isn't leading this. I think that Dan Quinn would be the favorite if Paton was leading the interview portion of this. He's not, though. It's Penner, and there will be, leaning on Paton a little bit. He'll have some influence, but final say, it's not him. I also think it's an interesting. Did you guys see James Palmer video today on the Broncos head coaching search?
Give us a breakdown of what happened.
He mentioned in there, and this could be, I don't know how truthful it is because I know people are, everyone's fed different information, but James Palmer noted it as the coaching search went from Hackett, and he emphasized then Kevin O'Connell, then Dan Quinn. I think that's important also to note there. And that's only if Paton has as much influence. And I think that if he was the person hiring it this season, that would be a very likely candidate. I just wonder how much influence he has now. I don't know if Dan Quinn is actually that guy.
Great.
Yeah, I think it's totally fair.
Fair point. Frankie brings up an interesting point that I want to point to just because I like answering Frankie's questions. I just don't think these guys want to tarnish their already great coaching careers for this job. I don't think these guys are going to come back and rebuild a team from the ground up.
It's possible, right?
Sure.
It's possible, but I think that's a person-to-person case. That's kind of what I think. I think it's a person-to-person. So people have different motivations in this. They really do have different motivations in this. Sometimes the money just talks. Like if the Broncos were to offer these guys a substantial amount, sometimes it's the power. They'll take the worst job if that job is offering the most power. There's different things that could play into it. I think that does diminish a section, though, for sure.
Joey, I have a question for you. Where's Vic Fangio?
Where is Vic Fangio, by the way? He is not coaching right now. It sounds like he took the year off. And then it also sounds like this next year he will be part of Sean Payton's coaching staff from a report that came out. Sean Payton has already put Vic Fangio and him together in a group, which is why I don't know if
that's the reason. That might be the biggest impediment. That might be the biggest impediment.
Yeah.
Great. Perfect. If anybody has any more questions, you can go ahead and send them in. But I think that we have talked quite a bit about the Broncos coaching staff. Do either of you have any final points to hit? Joey's question of the day.
Boom. I'm like, damn.
Long enough.
I want to ask you guys if you got what is the most important quality of a head coach to you?
Swag.
Swag. Okay. What is the coach? What is the coach that brings the most swag in your mind, Brie? If you were the
Mike McDaniel. What I really want is
Hackett and McDaniel. You nailed it.
It's swag. It's dancing ability. No, I think I get stuck on the players coach mentality, and we saw that backfire on one instance, but we saw it flourish in two others with Evero and Christian Parker, and the defense in general, and just how they've been running things. That I think that it's really important to mimic whatever they're doing because it's working. You're doing player focus, but you also know when to draw the line and how to set them up for success. I still think that's really important. That doesn't mean you have to be their best friend. It's a lot like parenting. You're not trying to raise someone and make them your best friend. You're trying to do what's best for them. So I would like that to be the most important thing to me. And I think you can manage that while still not being a jackass or a Looney Tune character like we've seen. Zach.
Flexibility / the ability to find solutions to new problems, because you're going to be greeted with that as a head coach. And how flexible are you in finding answers to those problems? That, I think, is what has made Mike McDaniel special, is what he did going into Miami and going, okay, there's a problem with this offense. How do I fix it? And then as problems have presented themselves throughout these weeks, he's done a good job of schematically adjusting and fixing it. Maybe not getting it back to the high point, but you've seen adaptability from him, and I've been really impressed. I think the best example of this is Shane Steichen and the Eagles staff. And you look at what they've done. Every week, a defense throws something at them that, oh, the Eagles haven't seen this yet, and it causes them to stumble a little bit. The next week, they've got an answer for it. And that's the type of stuff I'd look at. Like, what did you do? You're interviewing a defensive coordinator who just coached an awesome defense for the last season. What did they do when their star player was out 4 weeks? Were they running the same system and they just banked on other star players stepping up? Or were they tweaking things? Were they looking for new answers, new solutions? Were they demonstrating creativity and ingenuity? That would be the biggest thing I would look for. I think it's very hard to know how the locker room stuff's going to translate. I don't think there's a clear correlation with experience, with an offensive background, with a defensive background. I think there is a correlation between the ability to be flexible and come up with new solutions and being successful as a head coach. And so that's what I would look for.
Respect both those answers. Respect them.
How about you, Joey?
One quality is tough. For me, I asked this question because I really didn't. I have an idea of what I would draw up as a coach, but what's the most important quality is a little tough for me. And that's honestly the reason why I asked you guys tonight. I thought both of you guys had really good answers.
All right. We've stumped you yet again. I love it. I absolutely do.
Again.
If you really enjoyed today's show and you haven't already done so, I need y'all to subscribe to the channel. I need you to you don't have to set the notifications. Listen, we're on time every single day, 6 p.m. Mountain Time here from Mile High Sports. We go live Monday through Saturday. Thursday is a very special episode of Let's Talk Broncos for the Let's Talk Draft, because you'll get Frankie, and he's been in the comments all night. We appreciate him very much. So joining Joey Richards as they break down all things Denver Broncos draft related and outside of that, because not necessarily all of these players are going to be able to be targets for the Broncos. So you want to tune in Thursday. I know they're very excited about this episode upcoming, so you want to tune in for that. You can find JR's work over at JR Drafts. I like calling you JR. I miss those times. Joey Richards just seems so formal. You really need to check out his work over there. He writes for Mile High Sports. Joey, take it away.
Okay. To end the show, I kind of want to give a shout out to Zach Seegers. That's my main goal in this, because people doubted him. They said that it was not possible to cut Russell Wilson at this point. They doubted him. They hated on him. I saw it firsthand. Everybody was denying the fact that it was possible without any facts whatsoever. It was something that people were hating. I'll be honest. They didn't like the facts. They didn't like that facts Zach were presenting. Up until Greg Rosenthal said it was possible. Then all of a sudden, everyone wants to give Zach Seegers his flowers.
Thank you, Joey. I gotta say,
it was a little crazy. I won't lie.
I'm happy with it. I'm beaming because honestly, and I'll flex my ego a little bit here, I feel that Greg Rosenthal saw my tweet. The way his tweet was phrased and everything, I think it kind of lined up. And Greg Rosenthal has long been one of my inspirations in this business. I talk about on here, like a lot of the shit I say on here about how I don't put a lot of stock in predictions. I think there's a lot more important things about football. This is all about entertainment at the end of the day. It's about having fun and stuff. A lot of that comes from values I've kind of picked up from Greg and hearing him talk about football and going, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if he saw something that I wrote and went, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, I am flattered by it. I shout out Joey for shouting me out and quote tweeting Greg Rosenthal and getting the like from Greg and getting it on his radar, because, again, he's been such a inspiration to me in my career. Yeah, fingers crossed on the Greg Rosenthal.
We need
follow.
that follow.
But I'm happy people are warming up to the idea. It is possible. And that's the one thing. If you think they shouldn't cut Russ, totally fine. I understand it's an aggressive strategy. It's possible. And you should know it's possible. And if the Broncos make the wrong decision this season, even if that's cutting Russ, if they cut Russ and he goes back to being an MVP level player, oh, wait, he never got an MVP vote. If he goes back to being a Pro Bowl level player, I think, then you'll feel bad and eat some crow. I just think that's wildly unlikely.
I forgot to mute my mic. I almost died laughing.
Can I also give a shout out to Bree at the end of this podcast?
Yes. Bree is killing it on the Fan Cave. The go.
Fan Cave, which I am not invited to. I'm just
he is forbade Joey from joining us.
I say that because she invited me last week and I didn't see it.
Joey, I was gonna pour it on for you.
You were gonna pour it on. I needed to end it right there. I just needed to make the quick joke.
Bunch of dorks, I swear.
Bree's doing a phenomenal job hosting the show. She's doing a great job at the Fan Cave, where she has her own show where she's giving like every piece of information that you'd want. I highly recommend everybody go listen to that. 1 to 2, am I correct, Bree?
Yes.
Yep, Mondays.
Thank you for knowing my schedule.
Mondays 1 to 2. Everyone make sure you're checking that out. You can find her at Bree Macis 303. It's ever so important you follow her. Bree is honestly the glue of this show. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. She is. She's the glue.
And if you're not going out and checking out Bree's individual work, look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I hate women?
That's crazy. That's crazy.
We'll end the show like that. Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.